So if you manage to get, just 1% better at something every single day for a year, you don't actually end up 365%
Right,
better.
the math doesn't work like that at all.
No, it's crazy. You actually end up nearly 38 times better than when you started. Like,
Yeah.
it's a mathematical reality that just completely shatters how we naturally think about progress.
It really does. Because our brains just don't process compounding very well.
Exactly. But there's this terrifying flip side to that exact same coin, which is if you get 1% worse every day for a year, you don't just experience a slight dip.
No, it's a crash.
Yeah, you decline almost all the way down to zero.
It's just the brutal, unforgiving nature of compounding. A shift that starts as this almost invisible anomaly, like a tiny win or, I don't know, a minor setback, it literally accumulates into a completely different physical and psychological reality over time.
And that is exactly what we are exploring today. For this deep dive, we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of notes, research, and excerpts, all centered around Atomic Habits by James Clear.
It's such a foundational text for this stuff.
It really is. And your mission today, as you're listening, is to discover the hidden mechanics of your own behavior. Like, we're going fundamentally into the reasons why massive, life-altering success actually does not require massive action.
Right.
We're going to look at how tiny, just seemingly insignificant changes compound into these remarkable mind-bending results.
We are essentially going to deconstruct not just the what of our daily routines, the actions themselves, but the underlying why. The goal here is to take a journey from simple physical actions to the systems that govern those actions and ultimately to the very core of your personal identity.
Yeah, because we need to stop looking at habit formation as this, like, miserable list of boring, nagging chores you write on a whiteboard in your kitchen.
Exactly, like taking out the trash.
Right, and start seeing it as the compound interest of self-improvement. But to truly understand the weight of this concept and why it is so wildly necessary for survival, we kind of have to start by looking at a moment of absolute devastating crisis.
We do, because the origin of this intense focus on the atomic level of behavior comes from a deeply traumatic place in the author's own life.
It wasn't just some productivity hack.
No, not at all. It wasn't born out of a desire to just be a little more efficient at the office. I mean, it was born out of pure survival.
So let's set the scene. It's the final day of his sophomore year of high school. He's just a normal kid, absolutely loves baseball, has dreams of playing professionally. And then this freak accident just completely derails his existence.
It's awful.
A classmate takes a full swing with a baseball bat, and the bat slips out of the kid's hands. It literally flies like a helicopter through the air, and it strikes the author directly between the eyes.
The physical description provided in the text it's jarring.
Yeah.
The force of the wooden bat was so extreme that it crushed his nose into a distorted U shape.
Oh, man.
And the collision actually sent the soft tissue of his brain slamming into the inside of his skull. I mean, within a fraction of a second, he sustains a severely broken nose, multiple skull fractures, and 2 entirely shattered eye sockets.
It's a catastrophic impact. And, the most terrifying part is that he doesn't even realize how bad it is at first because the human body goes into shock.
Right, the adrenaline masks it.
Exactly. He's bleeding everywhere. A classmate takes off his shirt and hands it to him to plug the blood. And a teacher actually just walks him to the nurse's office. Like, nobody in that school hallway realizes that his brain is rapidly swelling inside his cranium.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
Every single minute is critical. And they're just casually walking down the hall.
Well, when they finally get to the nurse, the severity of the neurological trauma becomes really apparent. She asks him a series of basic cognitive questions. She asks what year it is. He says 1998. It was actually 2002.
Wow.
Yeah. She asks who the president of the United States is. He says Bill Clinton. It was George W. Bush.
And then there's this detail that really makes your stomach drop. She asks his mother's name. It takes him 10 full seconds to remember it.
10 seconds is an eternity in that
It
situation.
really is. His brain is simply failing to retrieve basic information under the intense physical pressure of the swelling.
And he loses consciousness shortly after that. An ambulance arrives, and his body just begins to shut down entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, he loses the ability to swallow, he struggles to breathe on his own, and he actually starts experiencing seizures.
It's just escalating so fast.
It is. The local hospital realizes they are entirely unequipped to handle a head trauma of this magnitude, so they have to medevac him on a helicopter to a much larger facility in Cincinnati.
And there's this heartbreaking detail in the notes about his parents. 10 years prior to this exact moment, they had been in that very same hospital in Cincinnati for 2.5 years when his little sister was fighting leukemia.
I can't even imagine.
Right. Now, a decade later, they are back on the exact same floor, with a priest and a social worker attempting to comfort them as their son is put into a medically induced coma and placed on a ventilator.
It is the absolute crucible of crisis. The medical team is fighting just to stabilize him. And, when he finally wakes up and the immediate danger to his life has passed,
Yeah.
the reality of the physical recovery is just agonizing.
Yeah, the details of the recovery are brutal.
He has completely lost his sense of smell.
Hmm.
And there is a moment described where just the simple act of blowing his nose forces air through the unhealed fractures in his eye socket.
Oh, I remember reading this part.
Yeah, his left eyeball actually bulges outward, like out of his head, held in place only by the eyelid and the optic nerve.
I literally cannot fathom the panic of experiencing that in your own body. Like, he has double vision that lasts for weeks. He isn't cleared to drive a car for 8 months.
It's a massive, massive physical setback.
And on top of all that physical trauma, there's a huge compounding emotional blow. Because remember, his entire identity is tied to baseball. His dad played in the minor leagues. This kid had aspirations. So a year later, after all this grueling physical therapy, he tries to return to the baseball field.
And this is where the psychological trauma often outweighs the physical. He goes to tryouts, and he is the only junior cut from the varsity team. He's sent down to play with the sophomores.
He sits in his car after getting the news, and he just cries. He turns on the radio and weeps. And, I want to pause here because this is where the conventional narrative of the comeback story usually kicks in.
Right, the Hollywood version.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a movie, this is the moment a montage starts. The music swells, the kid trains for 18 hours a day, and he comes back the next season and just dominates, wins the state championship. But that is not what happens here.
No. Real life is rarely a cinematic montage. He only plays 11 innings of varsity baseball his entire high school career. The actual turning point, the real pivot that changes the trajectory of his life, doesn't happen on that high school field.
Where does it happen?
It comes 2 years after the injury when he enrolls in college at Denison University.
Right. And you would think, okay, someone trying to bounce back from a shattered skull, a medically induced coma, and a completely destroyed sense of self-worth would need a massive, sweeping life overhaul, like a huge, dramatic intervention, some sort of radical transformation program.
You think so, yes.
But that is the exact opposite of what he does.
Right. He regains his agency through the smallest, most mundane, almost invisible routines imaginable.
He just makes sure he goes to bed early every night. While all the other college kids in the dorm are, staying up till 3 a.m. playing video games or partying, he goes to sleep.
He keeps his dorm room meticulously neat.
He starts lifting weights consistently, just a few times a week, eventually going from a 170-pound featherweight to a solid 200 pounds. And I have to push back on this, just for the listener's sake, because if I'm listening right now, I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Sure, it sounds too simple.
Yeah. Trying to bounce back from a shattered skull by making your bed and picking up your dirty socks feels like trying to rebuild a demolished skyscraper with a pair of tweezers. Like, how does holding your laundry actually overcome a massive trauma?
Well, it is a vital question because it gets to the absolute core of how human psychology actually processes trauma and recovery.
Okay, break that down.
When you go through a severe crisis, whether it's a physical injury, a painful divorce, a sudden job loss, or, a financial collapse, life forcefully strips away your autonomy. You are reminded in the most brutal way possible that you are not in control.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He had zero control over the seizures, zero control over his double vision, and zero control over the coach's decision to cut him from the team.
You're just entirely at the mercy of your circumstances.
Precisely. And in that state of utter helplessness, if you try to set a massive macro goal like, I am going to become a professional athlete, or I am going to build $1 million business, it's cognitively overwhelming.
That's just too big.
It actually damages you further because it just highlights the massive, seemingly unbridgeable gap between the broken state you're currently in and the idealized state you want to reach. It induces paralysis.
So the grand ambition actually works against you. It just constantly reminds you of how far you have to go.
Exactly. But micro habits, making your bed every morning, going to sleep at 10 p.m. sharp, those actions are 100% within your locus of control.
Right. Nobody can stop you from putting your shoes away.
Nobody can stop you from organizing your desk. They reestablish a fundamental baseline of order in a chaotic universe. By completing these tiny routines, you are proving to your own brain, day after day, that you can be trusted to manage your own life.
That is so powerful.
You aren't rebuilding the skyscraper yet. You are just proving you know how to pour 1 square inch of concrete. You're rebuilding self-trust. And that growing, quiet belief in himself began to ripple outward into every other area of his life.
And man, the compounding results of that self-trust are just wild to look at. He earns straight A's his freshman year. Sophomore year, he earns a starting role on the university's pitching staff.
It just keeps building.
Junior year, his teammates vote him team captain. By his senior year, he is named to the ESPN Academic All-America team. And to put that in perspective for you, that is an honor given to just 33 players in the entire country.
It's incredibly elite.
He graduates with the university's highest academic honor, the President's Medal. And all of this foundational discipline eventually leads to him building a newsletter read by millions of people and founding the Habits Academy.
And the crucial takeaway from this timeline is that there was no defining, singular moment of triumph.
Right. There wasn't a movie montage.
There was no one massive action that fixed everything. It was a gradual evolution, a long, quiet series of tiny breakthroughs. When his world was shattered, the only choice he had was to start incredibly small. And that tiny, continuous aggregation of positive choices compounded into a trajectory that was unimaginably different from where he started in that hospital bed.
The aggregation of marginal gains, which is just an incredible concept, and it provides the perfect bridge into the next major theme in the sources. Because, it's one thing to see this philosophy work for a single individual recovering from trauma.
Yes.
But if you want to see what happens when this exact same methodology is applied on a massive organizational scale with millions of dollars in national pride on the line, you have to look at the story of British cycling.
Oh, this is genuinely one of the most remarkable and statistically improbable turnarounds in the history of professional sports.
So let's paint the picture for the listener. The year is 2003. A man named Dave Brailsford is hired as the new performance director for British cycling. Now, at this point in history, British cyclists have endured 110 years of absolute soul-crushing mediocrity.
They were terrible.
Since the year 1908, they had won a grand total of 1 gold medal at the Olympic Games. And in the biggest, most prestigious cycling race in the world, the Tour de France, they had 0 wins. Not a single British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France in over a century.
Their international reputation was so abysmal that it actually became a commercial liability.
Wait, really? A commercial liability?
Yeah, the notes detail how one of the top bicycle manufacturers in Europe actually refused to sell gear to the British team. They explicitly stated they were worried that if other cycling professionals saw the British team riding their bikes, it would hurt their sales.
Wow.
They were considered a toxic brand. That is how deeply entrenched the culture of losing was.
That is just brutal. Imagine being a professional athlete and the equipment companies don't even want your money because you're that bad for their image. So, Brailsford steps into this toxic environment, and he does not bring in a secret, grueling new training regimen.
He doesn't invent a revolutionary new bike frame either.
Right. He brings a philosophy, the aggregation of marginal gains. His entire pitch was this. If you break down everything you can possibly think of that goes into riding a bicycle, and you just improve every single element by 1%, you will experience a massive, unprecedented increase in overall performance when you put them all together.
It's a radical departure from how sports programs usually operate.
Yeah.
I mean, most new coaches come in looking for the silver bullet, the one big play, the superstar recruit, the massive overhaul.
But Brailsford ignored the macro and obsessed entirely over the micro.
Exactly. And they looked absolute everywhere for these 1% gains. Some of it makes total sense if you follow sports science.
Sure, the standard stuff.
Right. They redesigned the bike seats to be slightly more ergonomic and comfortable. They rubbed specific types of alcohol on the tires to get just a fraction more grip on the pavement. They had riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature while they were waiting for the race to start.
Oh, and they utilized advanced biofeedback sensors. Like, that's all standard high-level optimization for a pro team today.
But they didn't stop there. They took it to a level that most people would consider bordering on madness.
Oh, this is the best part.
They tested various fabrics in a wind tunnel and realized their indoor racing suits were marginally lighter and more aerodynamic than their outdoor gear, so they forced the outdoor riders to wear the indoor suits.
Which is wild.
They didn't just give the riders massage gel. They tested dozens of different types of massage gels to see which specific chemical composition led to the fastest muscle recovery.
Okay, but this next part is where the obsession really blows my mind. They actually hired a medical surgeon to come into the training facility and teach the professional athletes the optimal way to wash their hands.
Hand washing classes for pro athletes.
Yes. The goal was simply to reduce the statistical probability of a rider catching a cold during competition season. Like, if you don't get sick, you don't miss training days. And they tested different types of pillows and mattresses, found the one that offered the absolute best night of sleep for each individual rider's body type, and then they would travel with those specific pillows to hotels on the road.
But the detail that truly encapsulates the entire philosophy is what they did to the team truck.
Oh man, the truss.
They painted the inside of the mechanic's truck entirely white.
Yes. When I read that in the notes, I had to stop and reread it. Because painting the floor of a truck white obviously does not make a cyclist pedal faster.
Right, it has zero aerodynamic value.
It has nothing to do with fitness.
Exactly.
But it allowed the mechanics to spot little bits of dust and dirt that would normally hide in the shadows of a dark truck. Dust that could get into the incredibly sensitive mechanics of these finely tuned bikes and degrade their performance by a fraction of a percent.
It's brilliant.
By painting the truck white, Brailsford changed how his team literally saw their environment.
If we step back and analyze the psychology of that decision, painting the truck white isn't really about the dust at all.
What was it about?
It is about environmental design, and it's about shifting the culture. When the athletes walk by and see their mechanics obsessing over a microscopic speck of dirt on the floor of a truck, it sends a powerful, unspoken psychological signal.
That every single detail matters here.
Exactly. We leave nothing to chance.
And the payoff for this level of obsession, it didn't take decades to materialize. Just 5 years after Brailsford took over at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, the British team just dominated the track. They won an astonishing 60% of all the gold medals available in road and track cycling.
Which is unheard of.
4 years later, when the Olympics came to London in 2012, they raised the bar even higher, setting 9 Olympic records and 7 world records.
In that race, they'd never won in 110 years, the Tour de France.
Bradley Wiggins won it in 2012. He became the first British cyclist in history to win. The very next year, his teammate Chris Froome won it. And then Froome went on to win it again in 2015, 2016, and 2017.
It's amazing.
That is 5 Tour de France victories in 6 years for a team that had been the laughingstock of Europe just a decade prior.
It's widely regarded as one of the most successful runs in the history of cycling. But the deeper question we need to ask is, why does this exact same framework work so universally? Like, why does the exact same philosophy that helped a traumatized teenager recover from a brain injury also help a national sports team dominate the globe?
Okay, why?
The answer lies in cognitive load. Shifting your focus to a 1% improvement fundamentally changes the psychological burden of ambition.
Unpack that a bit more. Like, how does it change the burden?
Think about the insurmountable crushing weight of the task. Win the Tour de France. If you're a British cyclist in 2003 and you wake up every single day staring at that massive goal, knowing your country has failed at it for 110 years, it is paralyzing.
Yeah, the pressure would just destroy you.
It's too big. You cannot control the weather, the other riders, or the terrain. But what if your goal today is simply to figure out which massage gel absorbs fastest, or to ensure you wash your hands correctly?
Oh, wow. Those tasks you can actually execute. You can win those battles today.
Precisely. They are highly achievable microscopic tasks. It removes the paralyzing anxiety of the massive goal and replaces it with the quiet, continuous satisfaction of daily competence.
You're just building momentum.
Yes, you aren't waking up trying to be a world champion today. You are just waking up trying to be 1% better than you were yesterday. It democratizes success.
Which brings us right back to that mind-bending math we started the deep dive with. Time is the mechanism that takes that 1% and turns it into a revolution. And there is this phenomenal analogy in the research that I think perfectly illustrates how these tiny marginal choices dictate our future, even when we can't see the immediate results.
The airplane analogy.
Yes, the airplane analogy.
It is arguably the most effective visualization of trajectory I have ever come across.
So imagine you are on a flight leaving Los Angeles International Airport, and your destination is New York City. The plane lines up on the runway, and right at takeoff, the pilot adjusts the heading of the plane just 3.5 degrees south.
It's an infinitesimally small shift.
The nose of a massive Boeing 747 moves maybe a few feet. As a passenger sitting in the cabin, you wouldn't feel a thing. Your coffee wouldn't even spill on your tray table.
Right, it's imperceptible.
But as that 3.5-degree error is magnified across the entire distance of the United States, as time and distance act upon it, you don't land anywhere near New York. You land in Washington, D.C., hundreds of miles away.
A shift that is entirely invisible in the present moment completely alters your ultimate destination. And this is exactly the physics of how habits function in our lives.
That is so true.
A slight change in your daily routine, eating one less donut, reading 2 pages of a book, saving $5 extra, is that 3.5-degree shift.
And this leads to a really confronting concept in the notes. The idea of lagging measures. Like, this is a tough pill to swallow.
It really is.
The author states that your current reality, whatever it is right now, is simply a lagging measure of your past habits.
Yeah.
Your net worth. That's just a lagging measure of your financial habits over the last few years. Your weight. A lagging measure of your eating habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning habits. Even the physical clutter on your desk or in your garage is just the lagging measure of your cleaning habits.
Ultimately, the universe gives you what you repeat.
Exactly. You get what you repeat.
It is a profound and, frankly, a very uncomfortable way to view your life, because it forces you to stop looking at the results, the scoreboard, and start taking deep personal accountability for the systems that produce them.
You can't blame anyone else.
No, you can't. Time is a magnifier. It is completely neutral. It does not care what you want. It'll simply multiply whatever behavior you feed it.
It's a double-edged sword. So let's look at how this compounding works for you or against you in real life. Because on the positive side, you have the compounding of productivity.
Which is huge.
Right. If you spend an hour automating a mundane task today or mastering a new keyboard shortcut, it might feel like a complete waste of time today. But it frees up a little bit of your cognitive bandwidth tomorrow and the next day, and that compounds over a whole career.
Absolutely.
And you have the compounding of knowledge. Warren Buffett famously compares learning to the compound interest of ideas. Reading one new book doesn't make you a genius overnight. But over time, old ideas connect with new concepts in your brain in ways you couldn't possibly predict, creating these profound new insights.
And relationships, too.
Oh yeah, relationships. Helping one colleague today makes them want to help you tomorrow. It builds a massive compounding network of goodwill.
But, the blade is sharp on both sides. There's negative compounding, too. And it is insidious because it is just as invisible as the positive kind.
Let's talk about the negative side.
The sources detail the compounding of stress. Imagine a standard Tuesday. You have a traffic jam, a crying toddler, a slightly rude email from your boss, a slight spike in blood pressure.
Just a normal, annoying day.
Right. Isolated on a single day, you manage them fine, you brush it off. But repeated daily for 5, 10, 15 years, these micro-stresses compound into chronic inflammation, severe anxiety, and serious health crises.
Then there is the compounding of negative thoughts. This one is scary to me. If you fall into a psychological loop of interpreting yourself as worthless or, viewing other people as inherently selfish, you literally condition the neural pathways in your brain to only see reality that way.
You build a filter that blocks out joy.
Yes. And the text also touches on this compounding effect at a macro-societal level, the compounding of outrage.
That's a fascinating point.
It notes that massive social movements, protests, or riots are rarely the result of just a single isolated event. They are almost always the result of a long, invisible series of daily microaggressions, multiplying over decades until the scale finally tips and the tension snaps.
It is the exact same mechanism as the British cycling 1% rule, just with a different destructive input.
Wow, yeah, it's the same physics.
And that is exactly why understanding this mechanism is so absolutely vital for you, the listener. You have to understand the physics of compounding so you can design your environment and your habits to avoid that dangerous half of the blade.
But I want to pause and challenge this idea because, practically speaking, accepting this reality is incredibly hard for us.
It is.
Like, if I'm a listener right now, let's look at 2 hypothetical scenarios. Scenario A. You are a millionaire right now, driving a luxury car, living in a massive mansion. You look incredibly successful. Society is applauding you.
Everyone wants to be you.
Right. But behind closed doors, you are spending more than you earn every single month. According to this theory, your trajectory is pointing directly at a cliff, even if the present looks great.
Yes, a total disaster.
Okay, then scenario B. You are broke today. You drive a beat-up car. You rent a tiny apartment. You look entirely unsuccessful to the outside world. But you are quietly saving and investing 10% of your income every month. Your trajectory is pointed toward financial freedom. But my question is, how do we actually stop obsessing over our current results, the scoreboard, and start focusing on our trajectory when the entire world is judging us on the scoreboard?
It is incredibly difficult, perhaps the most difficult psychological shift a person can make, because human beings are deeply social, status-driven creatures. We are biologically wired to seek immediate validation from our tribe.
We want the gold star right now.
We do. And our modern society almost exclusively rewards lagging indicators. We celebrate the massive bank account, we throw parades for the championship trophy, we praise the final number on the scale.
Yeah.
We do not throw parades for someone quietly saving $50 a week. We don't give trophies to the person reading 10 pages of a book every night before bed.
Yeah.
To make this shift, you have to cultivate an almost irrational level of internal conviction.
You kind of have to be a little crazy.
You have to recognize that the present outcome, the snapshot of today, is already dead. It is just an echo of the past. The true living indicator of your future is your current trajectory.
It's like judging a tech company by looking at last year's earnings report instead of looking at the revolutionary product they are secretly building in the lab to launch tomorrow.
That's a great way to put it.
But man, the sheer patience required to trust your trajectory when you are broke or when you are out of shape is where 99% of us just fall apart.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to one of the most relatable and honestly comforting concepts in these sources, the Valley of Disappointment.
The Valley of Disappointment is the psychological graveyard where almost all well-intentioned habit changes go to die. It is the trap we all fall into.
We've all been there. New Year's Day, you sign up for the gym, you go for 3 weeks, you look in the mirror, nothing has changed, so you quit.
Every single year.
But there are these visual analogies in the text that perfectly capture why it's so frustrating and why quitting is the exact wrong move. Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a freezing room. The temperature is 25 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to melt the ice cube,
Great.
so you start working. You put in the effort, the room warms up. 26 degrees. 27 degrees, 28 degrees. You are expending energy, you're raising the temperature, but the ice cube is just sitting there, completely unchanged.
It feels like failure.
It does. 29 degrees, 30 degrees, 31 degrees, still nothing. You feel like a total failure. You think, I've been working so hard and absolutely nothing has happened. But then you put in one more unit of effort, the room hits 32 degrees, and the ice finally begins to melt.
And that 1 degree shift, which took the exact same amount of effort as the shift from 26 to 27 degrees, unlocks a massive physical phase change. The crucial paradigm-shifting insight here is that the work you did from 25 to 31 degrees was not wasted.
It was just being stored.
Exactly, the potential energy was building.
It reminds me of plugging in a completely dead smartphone. We've all had that moment. Your phone is at 0%, it shuts off. You plug it into the charger, you wait 5 or 10 long minutes, you press the power button, and the screen is still pitch black.
And you think your charger is broken.
Right. It is so easy to panic and think, oh, this charger is broken, I'm wasting my time. But the charger isn't broken. The phone just requires a massive baseline of stored energy just to power the screen and boot up the operating system. The energy is flowing, you just can't see it yet.
That's a perfect modern equivalent. And the sources point out that this pattern of delayed, stored progress exists everywhere in nature. It's a fundamental law.
What are some examples?
Well, cancer is a terrifying example. Cancer spends 80% of its life entirely undetectable, quietly building its vascular network, before it suddenly seemingly takes over the body in a matter of months.
That is terrifying.
It is. But on a more positive note, bamboo is another incredible biological example. You can plant a bamboo seed in the ground, meticulously water it, fertilize it, and see absolutely nothing above ground for the first 5 entire years.
5 years of looking at dirt.
It literally looks like you were watering dirt.
Yeah.
But underneath the surface, it is building this massive, complex, extensive root system. And then, in its 6th year, it explodes 90 feet into the air in just 6 weeks.
90 feet in 6 weeks? But think about the tragedy of that. If you had stopped watering the dirt in year 4 because you were tired of looking at an empty patch of ground and you thought you were failing, no bamboo.
And that, right there, is the essence of the Valley of Disappointment. We are culturally conditioned to expect progress to be linear. We think if we put in 1 unit of effort on Monday, we should get 1 unit of visible result back on Tuesday.
We want the instant transaction.
We want a one-to-one transaction with the universe. But compounding processes simply do not work that way. The most powerful, life-altering outcomes are severely delayed.
Which perfectly explains why people quit right before they succeed. You go for a run every day for a month, you step on the scale, it hasn't moved a single pound, so you throw your hands up and say, well, running doesn't work for me.
You haven't crossed what the author calls the plateau of latent potential. You are stuck at 21 degrees.
Exactly. And this creates the pervasive illusion of the overnight success. When someone finally crosses that plateau, when the ice finally melts or the bamboo finally shoots into the sky or the business finally takes off, the outside world only sees the dramatic, visible event.
They don't see the 5 years of invisible root building.
No, it is the human equivalent of geological pressure. Think about how earthquakes happen. Tectonic plates grind against each other deep beneath the Earth's crust for millions of years. Massive tension builds and builds, completely unseen and unfelt on the surface.
And then snap.
Yes. Then one day, they rub against each other just like they have a million times before. But this time, the stored tension is too great. An earthquake erupts. The change takes centuries to build, but it appears to happen all at once.
There is a fantastic quote mentioned in the notes from a social reformer named Jacob Riis. And apparently, the San Antonio Spurs, one of the most consistently successful franchises in NBA history, actually have this quote hanging in their locker room for the players to read.
Oh, I love this quote.
It says, "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two.
Oh.
And I know it was not that last blow that did it, but all that had gone before."
It requires immense mental fortitude, patience, and absolute faith in your daily routines to be that stonecutter.
It really does.
To willingly swing the hammer for the 50th time, see absolutely no crack in the rock, and trust that the kinetic energy is being stored, not wasted.
And that is hard.
So that is the million-dollar question for you, the listener, isn't it? How do we actually do that? How do we keep swinging the hammer when we can't see the crack in the rock, when the scale isn't moving?
Well, the sources offer a radical solution to this exact problem, and it completely contradicts almost everything we are taught in school, in business, and in self-help seminars.
What is it?
The solution is, forget out your goals, stop setting them, focus entirely on your systems instead.
This is a massive paradigm shift. It is deeply countercultural because we are an entirely goal-oriented society.
We really are.
Let's really dig into this because society literally runs on goal setting. From kindergarten, where kids are trying to get gold stars, to corporate boardrooms demanding we set SMART goals. You know, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound.
Right, it's everywhere.
We have been constantly told our entire lives that if you want to achieve something great, you have to set a rigid, ambitious goal. Are the sources actually saying that goals are completely useless?
They're not saying goals are entirely useless, but rather that they are severely misused and vastly overvalued. The text draws on a brilliant distinction popularized by Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert comic strip.
Oh, right, the systems guy.
Yeah. He observed that goals are the specific results you want to achieve. Systems are the daily processes that actually lead to those results. So if you are a basketball coach, your goal is to win a championship. But your system is how you recruit players, how you manage your assistant coaches, how you run drills in daily practice.
Right. And the author argues there are 4 massive fundamental problems with obsessing over goals. And problem number 1 is something called survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias is a logical error we make when we concentrate only on the people or things that survived some process and inadvertently overlook those that didn't because of their lack of visibility. In the context of goals, the observation is brilliant. Winners and losers actually have the exact same goals.
Wait, let's unpack that, because we always assume winners have better goals.
We do assume that, but it's false. Think about it. Every single athlete who arrives at the Olympic Games has the exact same goal, winning a gold medal.
Sure.
Every single candidate applying for a high-level corporate job has the exact same goal, getting the job. If the successful people and the unsuccessful people share the exact same objective, then the goal itself cannot be the thing that differentiates them.
That is mind-blowing.
It wasn't the goal of winning the Tour de France that made British cycling successful. They had that exact same goal for 110 years while losing spectacularly. It was only when they implemented a daily system of 1% marginal improvements that the outcome finally changed. The goal was irrelevant to the progress.
Wow, that completely reframes things. Okay, problem number 2 with goals is that achieving a goal is only a momentary, fleeting change. The example given in the text is having a terribly messy room.
A very relatable example.
Yes, you look at your messy room and you set a goal, I'm going to clean my room today. You get a sudden burst of motivation, you spend 3 grueling hours cleaning, picking up clothes, organizing books, and boom, you achieved your goal.
You feel great for a day?
Right, you have a clean room. For a moment, but if you don't change the sloppy underlying habits, the daily system that led to the room getting messy in the first place, give it a week and you are right back in a pile of clutter, hoping for another burst of motivation to save you.
Because you have only treated a symptom without addressing the underlying cause. Solving problems at the results level is always a temporary fix. It's like putting a bucket under a leaky roof. You fix the wet floor, but you didn't fix the roof. To permanently fix the issue, you have to solve it at the systems level.
You need a system of putting your shoes away immediately when you walk in the door.
Exactly.
Okay, problem number 3. Goals actually restrict your happiness. This is what the author calls the either-or conflict. You set a goal and you subconsciously tell yourself, once I reach my goal, then I will finally be happy.
We do this all the time.
Once I lose 20 pounds, I'll be happy. Once I get the promotion, I'll be happy. Once I pay off my mortgage, I'll be happy. You are continually postponing your joy to some distant future milestone, and if you fail to reach it, you feel like a massive disappointment.
It boxes you into an incredibly narrow, miserable version of success. A systems-first mentality is the ultimate antidote to this. If you fall in love with the daily process of eating healthy or the daily process of practicing your craft, you do not have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy.
You're successful every time you do it.
Exactly. You are successful every single time your system is running. If your system is to write 500 words a day and you write them, you are a successful writer today, regardless of whether a publisher buys the book 3 years from now.
And finally, problem number 4, which is fascinating. Goals are actually at odds with long-term progress because of the yo-yo effect.
Yes, the yo-yo effect.
Think about people who train for a massive marathon. They run for months, they diet, they wake up at 5 a.m., then race day comes, they cross the finish line, they get the shiny medal, they take the photo, and then they stop running completely for 6 months.
Because the goal is gone.
Exactly. The singular thing motivating them has been achieved and removed, so there is no external force left to push them forward.
Which is why the legendary San Francisco 49ers football coach Bill Walsh used to famously say, "The score takes care of itself." Goals are excellent for setting a direction. You need a compass bearing to know which way to walk.
But systems are what actually make the walking happen.
Precisely. If you obsessively fix the inputs, the outputs will fix themselves. True, sustainable long-term thinking, as the author states, is goalless thinking. It is about committing to a cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement, rather than just obsessing over a single destination.
It's the difference between playing a finite game and an infinite game. The entire purpose of a goal is to win the game and end it. But the purpose of building a system is to continue playing the game indefinitely, getting better and better.
That's a great way to summarize it.
So if we accept this premise that we need to abandon our obsession with goals and focus on our daily systems, we arrive at the deepest, most profound layer of this entire philosophy, identity-based habits.
This is where we transition from simple behavioral psychology into the realm of profound self-actualization and cognitive restructuring.
The sources outline 3 distinct layers of behavior change. Picture them like the concentric layers of an onion.
Okay, and yeah.
The outermost layer is your outcomes. This is what you get: losing weight, writing a book, winning a championship. The middle layer is your processes. This is what you do: going to the gym 3 days a week, writing 500 words a day, practicing free throws.
Right.
But the innermost layer, the absolute core of the onion, is your identity. This is what you deeply believe: your worldview, your self-image, your biases, your judgments about yourself and others.
And the fundamental flaw in human behavior is that most people start from the outside layer and try to work their way in.
Explain that.
Well, they say, I want to be skinny, which is the outcome, so I will blindly follow this restrictive diet, which is the process. But they never pause to consider the core identity, the underlying beliefs that drive their daily actions.
There is an analogy in the text that I think makes this abstract concept crystal clear. Imagine 2 different people who are both trying to quit smoking cigarettes, and you walk up and offer them both a cigarette.
A classic example.
The first person declines and says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." Now, that sounds perfectly reasonable, right? But listen to the hidden language. They still fundamentally believe they are a smoker who is just temporarily trying to do something else.
Right. They are entirely focused on the outcome of quitting, but Their identity hasn't shifted.
Now look at the response of the second person. When offered the exact same cigarette, they simply say, "No thanks, I am not a smoker."
Wow.
It is a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in vocabulary, but it represents a massive tectonic shift in identity.
It changes everything about the interaction. The second person is no longer identifying with the old behavior. Smoking is a relic of their past, not a feature of their present.
They aren't trying to be anything.
No, they aren't fighting an internal battle. They're simply acting in natural accordance with who they already believe they are.
This is so profound if you are listening right now and struggling to build a new habit. Think about how much mental friction this removes from your daily life.
It takes away the struggle.
If you change your internal vocabulary and ultimately your core identity, you stop fighting yourself. You're no longer forcing yourself to do a chore through sheer willpower. The goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner.
Exactly. In clinical psychology, we talk frequently about cognitive dissonance. The human mind absolutely hates when our physical actions do not match our deeply held beliefs about ourselves.
It creates severe psychological discomfort.
Yes, behavior that is incongruent with the self will simply not last over the long term. You can force it for a week, maybe a month, but you will regress. If you want to build wealth but your core identity is a consumer rather than a creator, you will inevitably be pulled back toward spending every dollar you make.
Your habits will always eventually revert to match your identity.
They have to.
So true behavior change is actually identity change. If you do not shift the fundamental belief behind the behavior, you are just putting a flimsy Band-Aid on a broken system. You have to literally upgrade your identity. But that raises the ultimate question. How do you convince yourself that you are a new person?
You do it through those tiny atomic habits we discussed at the very beginning. Your habits are the evidence of your identity.
Okay, I like that. Evidence.
Every time you write a page, you cast a vote for the identity of a writer. Every time you practice the violin for 5 minutes, you cast a vote for the identity of a musician. You don't need a unanimous victory to change your self-image. You just need a majority of votes.
Man, what an incredible journey this deep dive has been. We started by looking at a high school kid lying in a hospital bed with a shattered skull, desperately trying to regain a tiny sliver of control over his chaotic life by simply making his bed.
It's amazing where it started.
And we ended up essentially decoding the foundational DNA of human behavior. We've explored how Dave Brailsford used 1% marginal improvements to turn British cycling from a toxic laughingstock into a dominant global dynasty.
Painting the truck white.
Right, painted the truck white. We learned why we shouldn't panic and quit when we hit the valley of disappointment, because we are just storing potential energy like an unmelted ice cube or an unseen bamboo root.
We're building the root system.
We realized that we need to stop obsessing over our goals and start trusting our daily systems. And finally, we discovered that true, lasting change only happens when we upgrade who we fundamentally believe we are.
It is an incredibly powerful, cohesive framework for living. And for you, the listener, the ultimate takeaway is a reminder of a harsh but deeply empowering truth. You do not rise to the level of your grandest goals. You fall to the level of your daily systems.
I'm going to write that down.
Every single action you take today, no matter how atomic or microscopic, is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
That is the perfect way to encapsulate it, the compound interest of self-improvement. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, lingering, somewhat provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Something to think about.
We've talked so much about aligning your actions with your identity, but imagine for a second that all your internal thoughts, all your grandly stated goals, and all your secret dreams were completely invisible to the world.
Okay.
If a total stranger were to look solely at your daily routines, the actual physical habits you perform every single day, with absolutely no knowledge of what you want to achieve, what exact identity would they assume you were building?